Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak at this conference. I will go quite quickly, because there's a lot to talk about. Oh, I've got Dutch coming out there. Good heavens. What is? I hope it's not rude. Does it say something rude? No, it is polite, is it? Okay, good. So the argument which I'm going to make today was stated in my book, The Ideology of Religious Studies. But I've developed it in more detail in a recent book, which is on display on the Oxford stand, Discourse on Civility and Barbarity. Okay, but I want to see the sidebar. That's great, thanks. No, it's still there. It's still there. A discourse on civility and barbarity, a critical history of religion and related categories. And there is also another book which, well, thank you very much for mentioning that, Religion and the Secular, Historical and Colonial Formations, which is a collection of 12 authors looking at the process whereby the distinction between the religion and the secular developed within a historical and colonial context. Now, let me say that what I'm going to do, first of all, is to rather quickly make a statement of some methodological principles which I would like to persuade you, if I am able, to agree are necessary. I'm also trying to persuade myself. I think that's part of the purpose of these conferences. We're trying to persuade ourselves as much as other people to believe in something. The first principle is that the attempt to analyze the discourse on religion as a generic category cannot be successful if the analysis excludes a simultaneous analysis of the major ideological categories with which it is connected. And important examples of these are secular, politics, economics, the state, civil society. In other words, in the modern English language discourses that dominate the media and indeed the humanities within the universities, religion is always either implicitly or explicitly connected to one of these other categories. The connection is often by mutual exclusion. For example, religion and politics. Often you see books with this title, and people talk constantly about religion and politics. And the problem is always that they connect at some uncomfortable point, but they should be kept separated. And I think you can say a similar thing about these other categories. And here are some of the very common discursive binaries. Religion and the secular, religion and science, religion and society, religion and... The second methodological point I would like to make is that these binaries are reinforced in English language discourses by a number of other binaries. Natural and supernatural, this world and other world, knowledge and faith, external and internal, public and private, rational and irrational or non-rational. Okay. And whenever people start questioning what is meant, say, by religion, or what is meant by politics, which is equally problematic, then the attempt to explain what is meant by these terms will shift into some of these other dichotomies. Well, what we mean by religion is that it is to do with the supernatural, whereas what we mean by politics or by science is that it's to do with the natural, or this world. When we press, well, what do we mean by those terms, because they're all very slippery, these terms, then you get some other dichotomy coming in to replace it. And actually, these form a circle. So we go round in a circle, and each dichotomy displaces the other one. And that's how the illusion that we have a kind of meaningful referent in the world to these terms is able to be maintained through the discursive process. The third point is that these modern binaries have been embedded in our modern discourses by the identification, on the one hand, religion, church, and priest, and on the other hand, secular, state, and king, or ruler. This is frequently expressed in historical works, for example, this dichotomy, and it's often taken for granted in modern discourses. And this series of oppositions predates both Eliade and Durkheim, but I think they've done a lot to, theoretically, to embed them into our assumptions. And then, let me just, then there's this pair. Religion is identified with the sacred, and the secular is identified with the profane. So you've got, if we just go back to where we were before, we've got religion, secular, church, sacred, and state I'm getting confused here. Yeah, so we've got religion, church, priest, and sacred, and then on the other side of the dichotomy, you've got secular, profane, king, and state. But actually, a moment's reflection tells us that this dichotomy doesn't work in real empirical situations. But I think it's been the identification of religion and the sacred, and the secular and the profane, which I want to separate. I think Durkheim has a lot to answer for. I mean, I am a fan of Durkheim. I love Durkheim. And I think his work on classification systems was truly insightful. But I think in the elementary forms of the religious life, he made a profound methodological mistake in closely identifying religion and the secular. And I want to explain why. Religion and the sacred, sorry. And then on the other side, the secular and the profane. And I want to explain why, and I want to try and drive a conceptual wedge between these two dichotomies. The fourth principle that I'd like to argue is absolutely essential for us to get some light on this intractable problem. The attempt to analyse the Anglophone and more generally Europhone discourse on religion as a category cannot be done if the analysis is confined to one discipline, such as religious studies, but it has to be interdisciplinary. By essentialising, for example, religion and politics as two distinct domains of human life, the corresponding academic disciplines, political science and religious studies, they embed this essentialised distinction into their formation. And so political theorists don't see religion as really their thing unless it's a problem about how religion comes into politics. And equally, a lot of religious studies people, they only talk about politics casually, as though it's sometimes a problem about, well, is this a religious or a political thing? But actually, if you look at it from both sides simultaneously, then you begin to realise that both of these central categories are extremely fluent. Neither of them can be defined. And that the so-called separation is a kind of ideological sleight of hand. It's a sort of illusion created by rhetoric. And I'm interested in knowing what drives this rhetoric. What is the power behind this rhetoric?